Welcome to this overview of special education. My name is Jerry Clark, and I'm a Parent Resource Coordinator with Parent Training and Information, PTI, at Washington Pave. Pave stands for Partnerships for Action, Voices for Empowerment. Pave is a nonprofit agency celebrating 40 years of supporting families in Washington state who are impacted by disability. Our home office is in Tacoma, and we have resource coordinators positioned throughout the state to provide direct support and training to families and professionals navigating special education process. We also maintain a website with articles and resource linkages to help individuals and families in their advocacy. Our PTI is funded through a grant from the U.S. Department of Education. Please note that the contents of this presentation do not necessarily represent the policy of the U.S. Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of special education and the protections available to students with unique educational needs. We will take a broad look at Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which protects rights for equity and access. We'll also look at the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA, which is the law that governs special education process and the administration of the Individualized Education Program, IEP. The end of today's presentation will provide more information about Pave and how we might help you. Education rights are like a pyramid, and the children who qualify at the top of the pyramid have all these protections. At the bottom of our educational rights pyramid is ESSA, which stands for Every Student Succeeds Act. ESSA provides for a free public education reasonably calculated to ensure that every child achieves. In the middle of our pyramid is the Rehabilitation Act, which includes Section 504. This law provides civil rights protections for individuals with identified disabilities throughout the lifespan. Section 504 defines disability broadly as an impairment that significantly impacts a major life activity, which might include anything from breathing or walking to socializing or learning. Any agency that receives public funds is bound by Section 504 and required to provide accommodations in order for a person to have equitable access to the opportunities available to everyone. A person in a wheelchair, for example, has the civil right to access a library, a school, or a museum with a wheelchair ramp and doors that are accessible. Accommodating hidden disabilities can seem more complicated, but rights are still protected. Consider, for example, that a positive behavior support is like a wheelchair ramp for a student who struggles to maintain expected behavior in order to access learning in school. At the top of our educational pyramid is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA, which provides a full menu of special education programming and services for qualifying students. The IDEA provides a very specific process for the delivery of special education programming. To qualify for an IEP, a student in public education meets criteria in one of 14 categories of disability, which we will look at in a moment. First, let's take a closer look at Section 504. The law states that no otherwise qualified individual with a disability in the United States shall, solely by reason of her or his disability, be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Keep in mind our pyramid and that students with IEPs or Section 504 plans are eligible for these civil rights protections to ensure that they can be fully included and receive equitable benefit from a government-funded program or service. Let's take a moment to consider the word equity. It doesn't just mean equal. When we talk about supports and services for a student with a disability, we can ask whether that help is providing equity. Equal opportunity would mean that students all get the same help. You can see from this picture that getting the same help doesn't give all students the same opportunity. This little guy in the light blue shirt can't see the game, even though he's got the same platform as the taller guy. The help that makes access to learning equitable is what meets the standard for FAPE, free, appropriate public education. We'll talk more about FAPE in a moment, but students eligible for help under Section 504 and or the IDEA have a right to FAPE. Students with known disabilities have the right to the help and productivity enhancers they need to access the same opportunities for success that all students have. If they need a taller stack of boxes, or an extra teacher in class, or a special swing on the playground, or something else specific that gives them the same opportunity to learn, grow, and benefit from school, then their civil right is to get the boost they need to have that equitable opportunity. This has been a quick overview about Section 504. For more detail, simply type the number 504 into the search bar on our website, wapave.org. A slide later in this presentation has more detail about accessing information on our website. Now let's talk about the law at the top of our student rights pyramid, the IDEA. People often date the IDEA to the 1970s, but the name of the law was different in the beginning. The Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975 was the first federal law that provided a full menu of services for students with disabilities in public education. It's helpful to know some of this history to learn the unique vocabulary of special education. For 45 years, students with disabilities have been entitled to a free public education that is specialized to meet their unique needs. Parent input has been a key aspect of the law since its early years. Also important from the beginning is the concept of education in the least restrictive environment, LRE, which means that students get the help they need to be included in regular classrooms to the maximum extent appropriate. Since 1975, parents also have had the right to specific processes for resolving disputes. Special education law was amended and renamed the IDEA in 1990. The concept of a free, appropriate public education, FAPE, became the overarching principle of this law. Virtually every conversation about the entitlement of a student in special education is about what truly makes the IEP appropriate to meet a specific student's needs. A student has the right to FAPE regardless of the nature or severity of a disability, and the local school district is responsible for providing FAPE. There are 6 general themes woven throughout the IDEA. The first is the concept of FAPE, the overarching principle that a student with a qualifying disability is entitled to an educational program specifically designed to meet unique needs. A student also is entitled to an appropriate evaluation, an IEP that is reasonably calculated to help the student make progress in light of the circumstances of disability, and education in the least restrictive environment to the maximum extent appropriate. Parents and students have the right to participate in educational decision-making, and schools are responsible to encourage and accommodate that participation. Families have the right to dispute decisions through complaint processes that are outlined in the IDEA's procedural safeguards. Some of the IDEA's language was further refined in 2017 when the Supreme Court ruled on a special education case referred to as Andrew F. Writing for the court, Chief Justice John Roberts said that trivial progress toward goals does not meet the standard of FAPE. A child making trivial progress, he said, would be tantamount to sitting idly, awaiting the time when they were old enough to drop out. The ruling also included firm language to reinforce grade level standards and parent participation in the IEP process. IEP process starts with evaluation. The IDEA includes a provision called the Child Find Mandate that requires schools to locate, identify, and evaluate all children with disabilities from birth through age 21 who have a known or suspected disability that might significantly impact access to learning. The Child Find Mandate applies to all children who reside within a state, including those who attend private schools and public schools, children who are homeless, and foster children. This includes all children who are suspected of having a disability, including children who receive passing grades and are advancing from grade to grade. The IDEA requires that an evaluation be fair and non-discriminatory. That means that if the student is nonverbal, he is tested using nonverbal techniques. If she speaks Spanish, she gets tested in Spanish. An unbiased approach also requires that schools gather information from different sources using a variety of instruments and methods. Just one measurement, such as an IQ test, doesn't fulfill this requirement. The evaluation determines whether the child has a disability and, if so, how that disability impacts education. If significant impact is found, then the evaluation determines whether specialized instruction is needed for the student to overcome the barrier of the disability. If all 3 criteria are met, a student qualifies for an IEP. The evaluation uses state standards to determine the child's ability to make progress in the general education curriculum. However, the measurements aren't all about the deficits. Testing also identifies a child's strengths, and the IEP team uses that information to create an IEP that builds on those strengths. Sometimes the school or a medical provider recommends that a student be evaluated for special education. Sometimes a family member makes the referral. Pave recommends that families request a formal educational evaluation in writing. Our website includes a sample letter and instructions for submitting a request. We've found that families who request evaluation informally, by talking to a teacher after school in the hallway, for example, often are confused when their requests don't start action. An evaluation request letter should include all identifying information for the student and a clear explanation of the concerns. Attached letters from medical providers or outside specialists can support the request. This timeline is provided by the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI, the agency responsible for oversight of all public schools and non-public agencies in Washington state. These timelines vary from state to state, but these are Washington's requirements. After someone makes a referral, and they might be a parent, the district responds within 25 school days. After a legal parent or guardian provides formal written consent, the district has 35 school days to finish the evaluation. If a district is evaluating after there's been a disciplinary action, the timeline speeds up. Note that these deadlines are based on a school schedule, and holidays and weekends don't count as school days. The evaluation process can take a couple of months from beginning to end. If the evaluation indicates that a student has a qualifying disability, the impairment will meet criteria in one of 14 categories defined by the IDEA. These categories are broad and capture a wide variety of conditions that can cause barriers to learning. For example, other health impairment is a catch-all for ADHD and many disabilities related to specific medical diagnoses. Note that emotional disturbance is a category of disability. A student with a mental health condition that impacts access to education can qualify for an IEP regardless of grades or academic ability. A student with a severe anxiety disorder, for example, might have a very difficult time staying in school and therefore need specialized instruction in emotional skills and accommodations for access to academic learning during episodes of illness. Note that 13 of these categories cover a student from ages 3 to 21, but developmental delay is a qualifying category for children in early learning through age 8. Our presentation today focuses on a section of the IDEA called Part B. Before age 3, a child can qualify for services through another part of the IDEA called Part C. Part C programs are administered in a family-centered way with evaluations and programming that are somewhat different from those for school-aged children. Pave has materials on our website about early learning. When a student qualifies for special education, an IEP is developed. Our website provides a full-length article about the IEP and how to understand its various components and participate in its development. We also provide an article about SMART goals and how parents can participate in goal setting and progress monitoring. Type SMART into the search bar at wapave.org. This is a basic outline of the parts of an IEP. It's important to understand that the IEP is built based on data collected from the educational evaluation. The data from that evaluation determines where the student is starting, the present levels of performance, and how specialized instruction, services, programming, and placement will meet the identified needs. If a parent believes that a need is unmet, sometimes it's helpful to review the present levels of performance to see whether they reflect the unmet need. If not, a new assessment might be needed. An IEP is designed to help a student access a free, appropriate public education, FAPE, the entitlement of the IDEA. If unexpected behavior is getting in the way of learning, then behavior support may be needed for the student to access FAPE. Educational experts throughout our state and nation are currently talking a lot about best practices to serve students who need positive behavior supports to access learning. The U.S. Department of Education issues guidance documents on a variety of topics. In a Dear Colleague letter about the IDEA's requirements for behavioral assessments and support, the department says this: recent data on short-term disciplinary removals from the current placement strongly suggest that many children with disabilities may not be receiving appropriate behavioral interventions and supports and other strategies in their IEPs. In light of research about the detrimental impacts of disciplinary removals, the department is issuing this guidance to clarify that schools, charter schools, and educational programs in juvenile correctional facilities must provide appropriate behavioral supports to children with disabilities who require such supports in order to receive FAPE and placement in the least restrictive environment. To find that document and related resources online, search for a Dear Colleague letter on behavior. Please refer to Pave's website for comprehensive articles about discipline in school and behavior interventions and supports. Since Pave began back in the 1970s, we've made it a priority to help families access original source documents about their rights and responsibilities. Here are the formal names of state and federal guidance documents related to special education process. Washington State's Parent Training and Information Center, PTI, is a federally funded program. We provide one-on-one support, training, and information that is free for Washington State parents, youth, and professionals who want to better understand how to navigate special education process. To scan through a wide array of additional articles and resources, click Learning in School on the home page of our website, wapave.org. For direct assistance, click Get Help from the toolbar in the upper right-hand corner of our homepage. Here's a list of some popular article topics available on our website. You can type these keywords and others into the search bar at the top of our homepage to look up articles on various subjects related to disability, parenting, and special education. If you have questions about our online material or need direct assistance, you can fill out a helpline request form online at wapave.org. Another way to get help is by calling our toll-free number 800-572-7368. Another place for resources and information is through our Facebook page. You can find us at Parent Training and Information of Washington. This slide is a reminder that Pave is not a legal service agency and cannot provide advocacy, advice, or legal representation. Our goal is to empower families by providing information and access to resources. Thank you for your participation today and for being an advocate for someone with special educational needs. Remember to practice self-care when you are assisting someone with a high need for support.